The Peace and Security Council of the African Union is meeting today to discuss the political crisis in Chad and Somalia. It comes just a day after opposition politicians in Chad rejected the country's army appointment of President Idriss Déby's son to take over in the wake of his death. Déby's 68, who had been in power for 3 decades, died after being shot as he battled rebels on the front line. Chad is seen as an important country to the international efforts to combat militants in Africa. So in the meantime, Somalia is also facing a constitutional crisis following an electoral impasse of presidential and parliamentary elections. Last week, Somalia's President Mohamed controversially approved the extension of his term in office by 2 years as voted for by Parliament. So let's talk about these current developments. We're joined by Dr. Charles Sinkala to discuss all these recent developments. Thank you so much for coming through.
Thank you very much, Colin, for having me, and good evening to your listeners and viewers.
Let's start first in Chad, where the opposition politicians there are rejecting the appointment of the late President Déby's son as his successor, although as he's been appointed in the transitional council, not exactly president. That has caused a furore in that country. Your thoughts?
Yes, if we look at the face value, many people, they will understand that it is a problem, to remove to replace the president with his son, especially where the country has been endowed with conflicts for a very long time. If we look at the history of Chad from 1960, when it attained its independence, and the assassination of the first president, we can see that it's been conflict and divisions within the country for many years. But at this time, we have to look at the peace and security of Chad, where things has happened leading and past the elections. The president was killed in the battlefield, and the tension in the country was not very conducive for civilian rule, where the constitution stipulates that the Speaker of the National Assembly should have taken power for the period of 90 days for new elections or either a new civilian government to attend. But you must remember, Colin, that the parliament, the government was dissolved leading to the elections. So I think, in my view, I can submit that having the military to take control of command of the Chad for now, it is not something unusual. But I think people argue as well that appointing the son will raise a lot of divisions in the country.
Yes, if it raises a debate in the country, especially with regards to who should succeed him, the other analysts were saying that why not appoint the second in command? Or secondly, why not allow the Speaker of Parliament to take over so that this transitional council can be able to stabilize the country and prepare for elections so that they can democratize and legitimize the way forward in as far as getting the country to assimilate in African politics and international diplomacy?
Yes, it's a very good view, but you can't take a civilian Speaker of Parliament into war. Chad, is going through division and the war, and having a civilian leader or head of state at this stage should have escalated the violence in the country. The military, they are the last line of defense in each and every country where the civilians are failed to manage the country politically. The choosing of the former president's son, normally the military has to see in terms of peace and security in the country, who should lead the country. If they just chose anybody else, it should have been worse. And I think within their choice, they really thought about it, that maybe the son to the former President Idriss Déby will bring renewal into the country. Normally a constitution of the country, if the civilian rule fails to contend, the suspension of the constitution is inevitable to allow the freezing of the constitution, like now the country is under a state of emergency.
So is there any way in which during this transition there can be a platform for this matter to be discussed in the African Union so that they can broker peace in terms of what the demands of the rebels are and why the government is holding its ground? Because this war is not taking the country anywhere.
Yes, Colin, but I've got a problem on the continent why we legitimize the rebels. Rebels are unconstitutional. They are not part of the negotiation of the government. Once we start negotiating with terrorists or rebels, then we are making them legal into the constitution. They are not recognized. What the AU, I see the meeting is underway, or it has been held already, part of it, is to support the decision by the Chadian military, to take the power and support them and condemn all the terrorist, violence which is happening there. The discussions should be with the political dissidents, the opposition political parties, to tell them that the country has lost the president in the battlefield, and they should see it not as a political thing, but to work together, either to appoint a government of national unity, which doesn't work on the continent, but at least they can have a sense of working together.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad that you are raising the point of not legitimizing the rebels, but then under the table, one can ask the question, is there any external influence on these rebels and what they want to achieve, and who could be financing them?
Yes, of course. We can hear the first president in the world to announce his presence at the funeral of the late President Déby. This country has been in the forefront of the Francophone countries, either to support the Francophone countries or to destabilize the Francophone countries. Leading to the elections or the death, rather, of the President Déby, United States of America told their embassy in the capital of Chad to evacuate and make sure that they are safe. United Kingdom as well, they did the same, and many other countries. But the country which I know, which knows about coup d'etats, is France. France has been always trying to help the Francophone countries. But if you investigate their presence on the continent, they are only there in the Francophone countries for minerals because of the oil, which is in charge. I've never heard of France trying to maintain peace and security in Zimbabwe, where we had problems, or come and assist South Africa during the xenophobia, or going to Lesotho, but they know where the countries they go to. So France's influence and the training the soldiers of Chad and the Francophone countries, it becomes a big problem on the continent. In fact, it threatens the security of the presidents, because as African leaders, we should train our own soldiers. We cannot have the outside world, Russia or United States of America or France, to train our military. This is a security threat to our continent. And this happened as well in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where Laurent Kabila, former president, was killed by his bodyguard. But you find that these bodyguards were trained by the French government and as well the Russian government. So I think as Africans, this will be a test that, or a lesson at the same time that we must really look at our international relationships, especially for the former colonizers.
All right, thank you so much for making time to speak to us. We will get to hear the latest on how the meeting goes about to discuss peace and security on the African continent. Thank you so much for your time, sir.